Definitely deja vu this. Ben's on his way. Roll the titles.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot see.
Good evening. Welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Ben Jacobs is on his way. So we will welcome Ben to the show in due course. But what an exciting day today has been. I have avoided Sky Sports News for the best part of the day and then tuned in at tea time to find out the news that all of you in the chat will know, that Newcastle are in advanced talks with this young man. And happy days are here again. And the comments that Stu Penman and Mitch have been making over the last couple of weeks about Newcastle breaking the transfer record seem to be coming true. Let's hope Newcastle can get this one over the line. Dan Ashworth is believed to be finally out there negotiating with the player, and let's hope that comes off. In other news today, of course, the deal is not dead at the moment for Pedro. Newcastle waiting for Watford's reply in the bid that they have put down on the table for that young man. Other news as well involving a potential Newcastle target is Paqueta, of course. And news is that West Ham are really interested in signing this young guy and bringing him into the country. No bid or official bid has been put forward for Paqueta yet. Will that prompt Newcastle to start moving in that direction? His agents are in the UK. Sky Sports were reporting, so we will wait and see. And when Ben joins the show, I'm sure we will have his views on that. And I know there is one or two questions coming in for Ben, which we can put to him. He's just overrunning, and he's just sent us a message on Twitter. Says, cool, sorry, I'm overrunning. So he will be on his way. I'll go through some of the comments while we can. Some of their players, we're talking about Leicester there. I'll keep that one for later than Geordie too. But if Tom Dixon says, good evening, what's your thoughts on Alexander Isaac and Paqueta at West Ham? It would be great if Newcastle had Paqueta in as well. Tom, hope you're enjoying your holiday, mate. Look, from my perspective, Isaac's a great signing. And I think it was Pete Davey on Loaded who first pointed me in the direction of Alexander Isaac. And I know a few of you in the chat have all said that it would be great if we could get him over the line. He will be somebody who could certainly, give us the lift that we need. And he's not got a bad record either at international level or at club level. So yeah, look, it's a 22-year-old Swedish striker that Newcastle could do with at the moment, especially if Wilson is going to be out for a considerable amount of time over the course of the next 9 months. The hamstrings are affected now. We could miss a couple of weeks, for example. At least we've now got somebody who could step in. And if Pedro comes in, we'd have two people who potentially could fill the gap when Wilson is on the sidelines. So Monkey Suit says, if we get Isaac done, squeeze Paqueta for 40 million and loan Pulisic, imagine. I worry now, though, that another 30 million for Pedro will definitely see us out of the move for Paqueta. Were we ever in the race for Paqueta, so Monkey Suit? I don't really know. Seems more likely to be Isaac, Pedro, and then Gallagher on loan to fill the creative midfield position. Just don't want Paqueta to play for another Premier League side. It looks as if West Ham are keen on him. David Moyes was interviewed and spoke about him in depth at his press conference today. Simon Davies says, listening to Keith Downey, Paqueta's not on the cards this summer, sounding like Isaac, Pedro, and a centre midfielder. It's exciting times, yes, but there will still be somebody out there who finds something negative to say about the transfer window, I would imagine. Doug Hall says, does Ben agree that we all have to do is match the price that Leon accept for Paqueta from West Ham? No tune tax, deal done, no time wasting. You know what, Doug? I will put that to Ben. But from my perspective, I genuinely feel that, that was simply something that was led by the supporters and not with any obvious connection with the club other than, Bruno. L. Stapleton, good evening, says, reports saying that Gallagher doesn't want to leave London. That was something that we addressed on the show last night with Mitch. Gutted if we lose out on Paqueta. Moyes grinning like a Cheshire cat on Sky Sports. Are we missing out on him, though? I mean, yeah, he's a Brazilian international, 30-odd caps, but were we ever interested in him? That's what you've got to ask yourself. It's just been a media link. Would Paqueta want to play for West Ham, though, says Kevin Moore. The one thing we've got in our favour with Paqueta, if it's genuine, is Bruno. And Joe Linton. We've got Brazilians here. If we bring Pedro in, there's another one. All Brazilians together. You would imagine Paqueta is going to have some say in which direction he wants to go. We could even try and loan Pulisic too. I'm not sure Pulisic is keen on coming up to Newcastle because we don't have Champions League football, of course. Jason Scott, just echoing what I said. Paqueta was just a bromance made up on Twitter. The amount of clowns tweeting me dad about Paqueta is embarrassing. This is the problem when you have directors on social media. Unfortunately, they are easily contactable, and that's going to happen. But let's question Jason, I guess, how many of these tweets does Mia Dad actually read or has time to read? Muzza, even all, just to be clear, when writing the song, it's Isaac, not Isaac. Good explanation there, Muzza. Luke Edwards, NUFC have a budget of 50 million. Whatever, says 2020. That 50 million has gone a long way, says Gary. Isaac, says R.E. L. Stapleton says, hope it's true that there's no budget, just bringing in the right player. Come home, Paqueta. Gary must have got a proven loan. His name is pronounced Isaac, says Making with Master. Very good. I like it. Evening to Robert Lee. Is it Sir Robert Lee? Luke is an absolute, well, that's your opinion, not mine, Jason. To be fair, did we ever put a bid in for Paqueta, or was that just fan talk? I agree, it was just fan talk. And yet again, says Toon 2020, Mitch and Stu were right that we would break our transfer record. It's not done yet, but it's looking very likely. And they said potentially not once, but twice. Roger says, is the patience paying off? I would say it is, mate. Still a week to go in the transfer window. Newcastle United making all the moves that they can to bring in the right amount of players, the right quality of players to make teams better. Don't forget, there's another transfer window in January, and Newcastle have got money to spend because they've done it properly. Panic buy. Wilson is injured, in my opinion. 70 million for a striker that scored 6 goals last season. 22-year-old, though, playing in a team that could create him a lot of chances, especially if we bring Pedro in, who's very creative. I don't know if you've watched him for Watford. I certainly have. I like him. And I think this is what we need. Ekitike was the same. Ekitike was, he wasn't proven. He was the next big thing. But Newcastle United were very interested in him and disappointed when they didn't get him. So make him a master. I get your point. But, if this person's a bit different, got a bit pace and can score goals, who's to say he won't hit the ground running in the Premier League? Evening, everyone. Has there been a complete volte-face regarding Pedro? Now Isaac is coming in, or is he still on? He's still on, Tom, as far as those powers that be at Sky. They've essentially said that deal is still very much on, and they're awaiting Watford's response. Everton haven't put a bid down yet. We scouted Paqueta November the 21st. Yeah, L. Stapleton. This is something which has been brought up on the show before. Inquired and rejected January 22, then moved on to Bruno, who was open to a move. Again, I've heard that on the show before. It's not something I was privy to, but if that's the case, fair enough. We did look at him, but not 100% sure that it's something that we're going for this summer. I really hope that the Isaac deal goes through fast so we can snap Paqueta out of West Ham's grasp. Says Trulls. He's not stuck on another train, is he? Ben? No, he's running behind today. He is running behind. Ben is training with the under-23s. Would Paqueta join West Ham? I don't know. Paqueta will go, I guess, where the money is at the end of the day. And the agents have a lot to say and a lot to do. But you would imagine if there's any interest from Newcastle whatsoever, then Bruno is going to be able to play a big part in getting come to Newcastle. Mozza, I am home alone again at this moment in time, and there is no sub tonight, Tony. Ben is assured me that he is going to get on here at some point. So we will just have to wait and see. Anderson hat-trick tonight. Yeah, we can talk about the game a little bit towards the end. Ben's late. It's so unprofessional. He's not late because he's actually he's late. He's a day late. He was supposed to be on yesterday. Rachel, Good news. Mozza saw 2 Magpies earlier, so we're all sorted with a cup performance tonight. Ben is saying bye to James Maddison, says Jason, which I'd still love to see James Maddison come as opposed to Paqueta. Mind, I'd love to see him in our midfield. I think it'd be fantastic. I know it would cause a bit of a problem. I think it would be a big issue as far as we're concerned. Eddie Howe would have, a nice problem to decide who he's going to drop. Would he change his formation? All of that, it would be interested. Matt John says, I hope Ben hasn't stopped to talk to somebody. I don't know where he is. I mean, when he said he would swap to tonight, I had this feeling that he was potentially going to be at a League Cup game and he wouldn't be able to do tonight. But he was the one who asked if he could swap it to tonight, so that's what we've done. Tune 2020 asking if we can ask, is it a 3-way split or do PIF spend all the money? I will ask that question. It's a question that keeps getting asked, which I keep putting off and then forget to bring it back up. So I will ask. Yano says, I love all these in the know channels, proving once again they know nout. Yeah, there is a lot of them, Yano, isn't there? There is a lot. But one of my mates who I speak to on a regular basis always says to me, that's all they are. They're just accounts, people who just make things up. And, they're going to get things right. At some point, they're going to get things wrong, but it winds people up on social media. That's all it does. And they clearly get a kick out of it. Burnsy called it. Well done to him, says Ari, one of the in-the-know accounts, of course. Harry Horsham says he will be gutted if Paqueta goes to West Ham. Mozza is still on with the pronunciation. Isaac, it is pals with Mikel Mourinho. All right, okay. Ben's doing a Barcelona talk, and as we speak on Twitter, Steve, so you may be on your Todd tonight. A Barcelona talk. What on earth is the Barcelona talk on Twitter? What, is he actually on the Barcelona talk? Is he? Oh yes, I can see it now on his Twitter. Join us and listen live as we learn from Ben Jacobs about various football topics and opinion, including the summer transfer window, FC in Barcelona, and he's actually hosting it. Well, this is unbelievable. I wonder what time that started. Anybody know? Somebody get on Twitter and get on that space and just tell them. Any idea what time you're going to join, Steve? Evening Cult members, hope you're okay. From Ray, yeah, well, I will crack on. Hello, Steve, love your shows. Imran, thank you very much, mate. Much appreciated. It is great to do these shows, and it is nice sometimes you pop on and do it on your Todd. But I mean, I've had a busy day today working out this the Sayers film budget, working out the Sayers film shooting schedule, and working out the final day of auditions for tomorrow. So that has been a busy day today. I've been on that for 6.5 hours with the director and with the producer. So it's been a busy day today. That's why I haven't seen any football news. So I could have done with somebody who had seen some football news being on. Anyway, Michael says, excited for Isaac. Disappointed on the Paqueta to West Ham news. Still think we will get Pedro too. Yeah, I do as well. Dan says, Fabrizio Romano jumps the gun and causes so much backlash. NUFC Twitter is a joke. Yeah, I don't tend to follow these people. I don't jump on these, the bandwagon of these things. And to be honest, I've watched that bloke. I've seen him a couple of times, but I don't really know the strength of him. I don't know. Is he somebody who essentially knows anything? I really don't know. I can't let him go to West Ham, says Steve Middlemas, meaning Paqueta. We shouldn't let him go to West Ham, just to make the statement they can't have players that we want. Did we want them though, Andy? Surely Newcastle is a better prospect than West Ham, says Rachel. Trolls says, we need to snap up Paqueta before West Ham would have really made us mean in the midfield. Mozza says, could we get Pedro, then just hijack West Ham's offer Paqueta just for laughs? We probably could. West Ham are direct rivals at the minute. I don't know about that either, This is another season. It's a new season. West Ham are up there. They've been up there. We all know what David Moyes is like. He has a couple of good seasons and then things start to go pear-shaped. West Ham potentially rivals at the moment, but Newcastle have had a better start. I don't know. It's an interesting one. Wood brace tonight. Yeah, I'd like to see Chris Wood get a goal tonight. If 2 would be great, but just one, just get himself a run out, get 90 minutes under his belt. Potentially as well, give Ryan Fraser a run out. Elliot Anderson. Be good to see a few of these, these players get in. Don't want to make too many changes, but there are obviously a couple of enforced ones. Callum Wilson, Dan Burn, of course, we know won't be playing tonight. But don't go too mad. But, we should have more than enough with the squad that we can put out to do the business tonight. Steve says, if we sign Isaac, does that mean that we play a flat pack floor? Is there a joke in that? I don't know. Isaac, our big guy, then 2 loans for window completion. Yeah, definitely 2 loans. We haven't used the loan market yet. Definitely think the scope to do that. Anything being said about Wilson, or people still guessing? They're all still guessing, mate. Nothing being said at all about him. He won't play tonight. Will he be at Wolves? Who knows? Watch this space. Alan McMurdy says, hope we get Isaac. He's a top player. How will Shuley improve him? Neil Calvert says, £150 million overdraft facility in place. Do you think they'll blow it all in the last week of the window? Neil, I think they will. As I say, I started to come round to Stu Penman and Mitch's way of thinking a couple of weeks ago when they were saying that they felt with what they had heard that Newcastle would break the transfer record that they've already spent on Joe Linton, not once, but twice. A lot of them felt Paqueta. I know Keith Patterson still feels Paqueta would come to Newcastle. Isaac's come from stage left. Nobody heard about it. Again, that's something that we all said potentially that could happen, that, we would bring in a player that hadn't been, on the radar, somebody who's been mentioned on the show, but not on the radar. But yeah, I think we will spend that money, Neil. There's no doubt about it. Okay, fresh in from his Barcelona show. Here is Ben. How are you, mate?
I'm good. I told them, listen, I got to do Barcelona, then I got to do Newcastle. So I'm going up in club stature, one might say. And I thought I'd be done bang on 6 o'clock, but I went on a rant about De Jong and all kinds of other things. So I apologize that I'm late.
Don't worry, mate. We got there eventually. I was having deja vu there and everybody in the chat was laughing, but don't worry about it, mate. I've kept the 640 people entertained as I would. Geordie Toomba Live, I'm going to get straight into his question so I can have a drink of water. Was even Stephen Ben, what's Ben's thoughts on Isaac from a neutral point of view? And also the question I asked yesterday, is there any truth in Leicester's owners looking to sell the club? So that means that they are wanting top prices for some of their players so they get as much out of the club if it's sold. Thank you.
Wow. What a question to start. Is Leicester going to be sold? I think the short answer is no, but the long answer is that Leicester's late owner, Kung Vishai, was hugely invested to long-term strategy and laying the foundations. And that includes Leicester building a world-class training facility. Sadly, he passed away and Top had to step up, and Top is the son, and that's what he's known as. And he's the chairman now. And it's very difficult for Top and King Power because they've done everything at Leicester, won the Premier League, got to the business end of a Champions League, and they want to progress the club. But the climate's changed during the pandemic, and duty free, which is what King Power is, has been hit really hard. So their finances are not in the same place as they were when Leicester won the Premier League to be as ambitious and big spending. And then because they've invested so much into the club and the community, they're at a point where if a strong offer came in, they probably would sell. But the club are very clear that Leicester is not on the market. They're not trying to sell. But it wouldn't remotely surprise me if somebody does come along that the offer will at least be entertained. And then with Isaac, I just think it's a flagship signing for Newcastle United. And we've said, haven't we, throughout the transfer window, that Newcastle have been very prudent, very sensible in how they've negotiated. And Eddie Howe said many times that financial fair play could be quite tough with mass spending. And then out of nowhere, late in the window, they are about to break their record fee on one of the hottest properties in European football in that position. And not only does it show the ambition of the football club to wait, and when they spend, make sure that they do so on a real statement, but it also tells you that that strategy has been there all along, which is don't buy established, don't buy old, don't get into bidding wars, find that young talent that still has room for improvement, can develop and become box office. And in the short term, you've still got Callum Wilson and Chris Wood and goals from the creative players around. So I think he's a perfect signing in that respect. The neutral perspective at the moment of where he's at is he's quite streaky. So coming into the Premier League at Premier League pace, where you have to have speed in terms of physical speed, but also speed of thought, I think he's a very confidence-orientated, raw player, which means if he gets caught up in the buzz of Newcastle and the momentum, he could be fantastic. But expect some lulls as well. His decision-making on the ball is a little bit suspect, but he's a good finisher. He's versatile. He is intelligent. He moves quite well off the ball. And I think that will be the most frustrating thing. And it's why he's streaky at times, that you often see him get into great positions and make really good runs. And then it's hit and miss what the final decision is. And he can be a little bit selfish at times. But when I use these words, I'm using them in the context of an elite level talent. So every aspect just needs a marginal improvement. And man management is key to that. And then Newcastle United will have a very, very good player for the future.
Yeah, I would agree. It's exciting times. And as I say, we always said one would be coming from stage left. And there it is. Doug Hall says, does Ben agree that all we have to do is match the price that Leon accept for Paqueta from West Ham? No tune tax, deal done, no time waste. And that is the other big breaking news today about this man, Paqueta, who's been linked with a move to Newcastle on more than one occasion in the media and on social media. His agents are in London. West Ham are interested. Are they about to hijack the deal, Ben?
Whether or not it's a hijack remains to be seen. The first question from Newcastle's perspective is, can they afford to pay the 60 million on Isaac plus what they've already brought in? And then another minimum, if we base it on West Ham's offer, 34 million on Paqueta. And of course, João Pedro still ongoing, not a done deal despite the excitement, but they're still there trying to get it over the line. They just want to pay what they've offered and not anything more. So we wait and see on that one. Paqueta's a bargain at that price. And I think that it's not hijack for me, as I understand it anyway. It again is Newcastle being very sensible and there in the shadows, because they still believe if they can afford Paqueta and want him, that with the Bruno connection and where they're moving, they've got as good, if not a better chance than West Ham United. So decision number one is, do they want Paqueta? Decision number two is, can they afford Paqueta? But the reason why I think they're being smart is because we've heard two competing narratives about Paqueta all summer. Number one, the Lyon perspective, that they've got loads of offers and he's a minimum 50 million quid player, 65 million euros. We've heard number two, the narrative that because Paqueta wants to leave, there's a cut price deal available for 34 million as per West Ham's bid. And then there's that side thing I've said many times about John Textor at Lyon, new majority owner, not really wanting Paqueta to leave, even though the player has been looking for a new challenge. So Newcastle are going to learn from this West Ham United bid whether or not 40 million euros and that cut price narrative, which has been pushed by the agent and is at odds with what Lyon are saying, they're going to learn whether or not that is the reality, or if it's just agent talk to drum up interest. And if it's the reality, then I think Newcastle can swoop in and actually be the ones to hijack West Ham rather than the other way around, if again they choose to proceed. Because at 34 million, bargain, and that might be within their finances. But if West Ham's offer is rejected and Lyon come back with the other narrative and say 65 million euros, Newcastle will learn that. And then they know that they're wasting their time late in the window and they can turn to other priorities or just be happy with what they've got. And it's really intriguing because someone's finally made a bid for Paqueta. So now we're going to find out the answer. Is it a cut price deal because of what the player wants and the agent wants? Or actually, are we now going to see Jean-Michel Aulas and Lyon hold out for what they've always said they were going to hold out throughout the window? And if it's 65 million euros, then I don't think Newcastle have got the finances to add Isaac and Paqueta in this window.
Okay, so 58 million for Isaac, then 60 million for DRB is one suggestion. Toon 2020's asked this question a few times, Ben. You might be able to give us a bit of an indication of what your view is on it. Can you ask Ben how it works with the transfers at Newcastle? Is it a three-way split between PIF and the company that Mirdad and Amanda have got and the Rubens, or do PIF pay it all?
Well, it's a football club. with a budget. So everything comes out of Newcastle United. I know that there's been some reports that every time they buy, it's ratioed based upon the ownership shares, which means that PIF would be paying 80% of a transfer and the rest would be paying 10% each. But that's not the structure. There's a very good chance for certain things at the football club where they have to actually take their own money or invest into the football club, that it will be ratioed, and that will be an agreement between the ownership group of how they choose to fund the club in certain areas going forwards. But with a transfer, Newcastle United, based upon their books, based upon even financials before the new ownership group came in, will allocate a budget, and that budget will exist at the football club. It won't need an injection of cash ratioed based upon shares of ownership. And then when they sign a transfer, the money will come out of it. And of course, every transfer is different. So if you make Isaac 60 million, I think it's actually 58, but if you call it 60 million for the sake of rounding up, then that's not paid in all likelihood in one chunk anyway. So you're offsetting the installments and the costs over a variety of years. But it's not my understanding that they're so fragmented that PIF come in with all this ambition and say, we're only going to foot the bill for 80%. And then minority owners have got to pay 10% and 10%. And obviously with PIF, they are investing in a football club and they want to move collectively. It'd be very unfair on a minority owner to say everything that the football department does, you're liable for the same percentage as per your actual stake in the club. And that's a really bad business model, because what if one of the minority owners sells their shares or leaves? Then is somebody coming in saying, yikes, if I invest in this football club, am I going to have to foot the bill for every single transfer to the tune of how many shares I buy? So I don't think it actually works like that. I don't think it's a three-way split. It wouldn't remotely surprise me if certain things are ratioed and certain owners either pay for certain things or contribute to certain things required at the football club. So if, for example, you look at the amazing move to make the women's team formally part of Newcastle United Football Club, that comes with a cost, that comes with investment, that comes with needing to probably make some new hires and so on. And all of that may well require some investment into the football club that might be split in different ratios between the ownership group. But with a transfer, it's just a budget that is owned and controlled by the club collectively and taken out of that. So it's not like after that, there's a three-way bill to each of the different components of the ownership group. Not as I understand it anyway.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a football club at the end of the day. Before I give a push to the sponsors, Pedro, I mean, this deal, Newcastle got a bit on the table. We believe that we're just waiting to hear what Watford are going to say to that offer. Everton sniffing about as well, Ben. Do you think this one's still likely that he's going to end up in black and white?
Well, it's funny because when everyone says somebody's sniffing about and a deal is this advanced, then it's probably being put out there on the Watford side. I'm not saying Everton are not interested, but Watford are quite happy to brief that, because then when they ask for more money from Newcastle United, guess what? There's another suitor all of a sudden allegedly prepared to pay it. There's two difficulties with this deal. One is the fact that, as I've reported many times, Watford want 30 million, and that's not 25 plus 5, that's 30 million plus add-ons. And Newcastle have never been prepared to go that high. And I think I got hammered when I said that, but it's absolutely the case that Newcastle see it as 25 million plus 5 million. So yeah, 30 all in if the add-ons are paid, but that's not the same as the 30 million fee up front. So that's number one. And I think Newcastle have made it clear that they think that's a fair deal, and they genuinely believe they're quite close, but it's not done yet. And Watford's perspective is there's growing interest. It could turn into a bidding war, and they still want the 30 million. And then the second problem is the add-ons are not particularly attainable either. So 25 plus 5 in Watford's eyes is actually just 25, and Watford are saying we want 30 plus 5 in add-ons that are more attainable. So they could argue at an extreme position that there's a 10 million difference between the two sides. And Newcastle have basically said, that's our offer, take it or leave it. Player wants the move, and he definitely wants Newcastle over Everton if Everton are genuinely interested. Therefore, the window's ticking down, so generate the contract and we'll sign it. And Newcastle think everything is done from a logistical point of view, and Watford want further negotiation. And we wait and see how it plays out. If Newcastle late in the window want to pay a bit more or adjust the add-ons, or if Watford just play hard ball and try and hang on to the player, which won't go down well with the player because he wants the Newcastle United move. And that's where we're at the moment. There is still a confidence on both sides, in fact, that this deal can get done. But it's incorrect to say at this point that it is a done deal. There are still some roadblocks. And whereas Watford would like to negotiate and solve the roadblocks, Newcastle United, as they've done all window, are being sensible and prudent and sticking to their guns. And we saw this with Hugo Ekitike as well. But the difference is that with Ekitike, it was a long-running saga with the agent, whereas now there's a week left of the window. And that plays to Newcastle's advantage, because if they just let Watford sweat and say, that's our offer, give us your final answer in a day or two, the window starts to tick down. And I think Newcastle are perhaps hoping that Watford will just agree to that. But if they don't, it wouldn't remotely surprise me. It's just my personal opinion if Newcastle walk away.
Yeah, getting back to Paqueta, Keith Downey did put a tweet out earlier saying that lots of people are asking about Paqueta. They've been asking all window, and his understanding always has been that Newcastle don't have an interest in the player this window. Potential for a midfielder to arrive on loan, but not the Brazilians. So that is his opinion. Thank you to Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals, 304 Old Durham Road, Gateshead. Telephone 0191 478 2730 or website darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.theguhd.com. And thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickies.co.uk or 01768 210 102. Thanks to Away Day Clothing and to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. If you want to subscribe, if you're a new visitor, 900 of you watching live tonight, then hit the NUFC Matters logo in the bottom right-hand corner and you can subscribe for free. Hit the thumb up underneath. It's very important. Helps us out massively under the video. It's free. Just hit the thumb up and click share to your social media, Twitter, Facebook, etc. We're also available as a podcast. Just search for NUFC Matters on iTunes, Spotify, and the rest. And you can listen to us when you're out and about, walking the dog, perhaps. If you want to join, then click join underneath the video or go to the membership pack, nufcmatters.com. You can use your smartphone to get there a bit easier. And if you do it that way, you get a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, and entry into the monthly draw. If you want to get a free car sticker, just email John at nufcmatters.com and he will post one out. Don't forget as well, we do support the food bank on here. NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is where you can make a virtual donation 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. Peter Beardsley Soccer School is still running till the end of August. For more information, info at peterbeardsleysoccerschool.com. Okay, back to your questions. Quite a few coming in. Nathan Thomas says, question for Mr. Barcelona. There's been some rumours around today that Newcastle are interested in a Barca player this window. Any idea who, Ben? Thanks.
Yeah, there's things flying around and I haven't got a specific name, I've got to be honest. It's one of those like Paqueta. It was interesting you spoke about Keith, great journalist, huge amount of respect. And this is the thing about the window, that when a club is interested, it sparks this fan desire, especially if you want the player. And then interest has to translate to something more advanced. And with Paqueta, Newcastle have never placed a bid in the same way that Arsenal are interested in Paqueta and they've never placed a bid. So where do you go from interest? And usually it's to an advanced negotiation with an intermediary or with an agent or direct to the club when you actually want to move. So then with Barcelona and Newcastle, it's the same kind of thing, that it's very possible Dan Ashworth has inquired about a player. But that doesn't mean that it's anything other than due diligence. And one little known thing about the window is that sometimes you just inquire about a player for your own data. So if I want to move in the market, I have to know how the name I want is valued against another name, and I can use that as leverage. So let's say Newcastle want Isaac, as we now know they do, and this is a bad example because they're not like for like in age or anything, But who's to say that Newcastle won't go to Barcelona and say, what's Aubameyang worth? Because then when they go back to the target they actually want, they've got intel and they say, well, that club's selling that player at that rate and they're like for like. Again, not comparing Aubameyang to Isaac. It's a bad example, but I'm just trying to explain. And this is what sets off rumour. And I think that with Newcastle and Barcelona, there's nothing really in it at the moment. But I did ask around, and obviously who's available at Barcelona? Well, there's Depay, who is not going to go to Juventus and may be able to negotiate free agency. Some think Manchester United might come back in. That's a signing that might divide the Newcastle fan base. But if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd be quite excited by it. And there's Dest as well. And I don't really think Newcastle need to strengthen in that area and bring in another fullback, but he's available at a relatively bargain price as well. So there's a couple there, but it could just as easily be a young player because clubs like Chelsea have shown are comparatively, in terms of the media limelight that they get, deemed to be working at senior level. But actually, as a ratio, it's usually 60-40 at a future window or future planning level, which is another unknown thing about the window, that you always think your club's scrambling for the now. And at this stage, they are, because we're in the last week of the window, I suppose. But generally, you use the window for elite level, top urgent signings at about 40 or 50% of your time. And then 50% of your time is on youth, is on forward planning, is on who can we talk to now that won't be available now. So Declan Rice is a good example of that because you've got to put in the work over time. Mm-hmm. So I honestly can't tell you who the player is. I've heard nothing substantial that suggests that Newcastle are going to go to Barcelona imminently. But what is clear is that Barcelona needs some outgoings, especially if they're to bring in Bernardo Silva. It's not Frankie de Jong, by the way. That's the one thing I can tell you. But Depay, who knows? Don't want to start speculation just for the sake of it, but he's obviously a name that Barcelona want to offload. Dest is another one that's available. Aubameyang looks like heading to Chelsea. That's all I really know at this point. I've asked around. I honestly haven't got any significant information back to tie Newcastle to Barcelona at this stage.
Okay. Chelsea, we talked about this a little bit last week, Ben. Anybody from there do you think could make the way to Tyneside? Pulisic, do you think? Or is there a chance of, I think we've squashed this thing about Conor Gallagher. I don't think he wants to move north. I think that was suggested in the past. But Pulisic, Adoy now we know is likely to go abroad. So is Pulisic, I think he was looking for Champions League football. Newcastle can't offer that.
No, but the thing that Newcastle can offer is game time and confidence and form and momentum, which is all important in a World Cup year. And the advantage of a loan, I suppose, is if Pulisic feels he can't get Champions League football by moving and he's not going to be that integral to Chelsea's Champions League, then maybe he is persuaded in a World Cup year to make the move. It's certainly been spoken about. I've always been told with Pulisic that if he moves, he'd like to go to Serie A. And he's been hoping that Juventus will come in for an offer, but that hasn't happened. So this is one to watch towards the end of the window as a late move, because Chelsea don't really want to sanction Pulisic to Manchester United. But with Newcastle, due to the relationship between the two ownership groups, they just might be persuaded to allow the move. And then it would all come down to Pulisic and whether or not he's prepared to surrender Champions League football. So I would say that Newcastle have got other priorities at the moment, even though everything has to be a priority because the window is winding down. They're not hell-bent on him in the same way that they really did like Maddison, and they have bid for Jack Harrison. And obviously they're finding that Leeds don't want to sell. And now we realise they've pulled Isaac pretty much like a rabbit out of a hat, which is credit again. And it tells you that we'd love as journalists to tell you we know everything. We'd love to follow the saga. And when it gets leaked out there, we follow it to the best of our knowledge. But make no mistake, these clubs love it. They absolutely love it, to quote Kevin Keegan, when they can pull something out the bag that we had no idea about. And right up until probably late last night, most of our understanding from people I've spoken to, and certainly mine, hold my hands up, no idea. And the reason for the no idea that was happening was because they previously briefed Newcastle that the sale was off. So we were well aware that there was an interest across the window, even when Ekitike was fading, but still not impossible. It was one of the names that they were looking at. But there was this consistent narrative that Newcastle couldn't afford Newcastle were not going to pay the release clause, which was a lot higher than this 58 to 60 million. Newcastle were not going to get the player. They were not interested. They were not going to spend 58 to 60 million this window. And I think maybe because of Ekitike not coming and some other missed striker targets, they've just decided to go big. Whereas perhaps if they didn't and Isaac stayed, they'd have come in for him in January or next summer when they maybe felt that it was worth spending that amount of money. So it's a mixture of kind of opportunism and Newcastle wanting to make a statement. And hey, fair play to them, because like I say, they've been able to do that business quite privately and secretively until the very last minute. And this is the window in a nutshell that everyone's pushing Pulisic, everyone's pushing Paqueta, everybody's pushing Harrison, everybody's pushing Maddison, and then Newcastle spend 60 million on Isaac. And that's the way they like to do business at this stage of the window, with an element of deflection. And that's not me saying don't believe what we say as journalists because I'm selling myself out of work, but it is just to re-emphasize something I've said all window, that it's not the journalists that are unreliable, it's the window itself. And that's part of the frustration, but also the fun of it.
Team news for tonight: Carl Darlow in goal, Emil Kraft, Jamal Lascelles, Paul Dummett, Matt Targett, Sean Longstaff, Joe Willock, Elliot Anderson, Matt Ritchie, Jacob Murphy and Chris Wood. Substitutes tonight: well, goalkeeping substitute is Gillespie, Kieran Trippier, Sven Botman, Joe Linton, Jamal Lewis, Federico Fernandez, Javier Manquillo, Miguel Almiron and Bruno on the bench. A very, very, very different team to the one we saw at the weekend, which was to be expected, but a very strong substitute bench should Newcastle United need it. So that is how the line up: Darlow, Kraft, Lascelles, who's captain, Dummett, Targett, Longstaff, Willock, Anderson, Ritchie, Murphy and Wood. Subs: Gillespie, Trippier, Botman, Joe Linton, Lewis, Fernandez, Manquillo, Almiron and Bruno. So looking forward to that, live on Sky at 7:45. No Dubravka tonight. That will set tongues wagging, says Jordan Toon for life. Yes, certainly will on Twitter. That is strange. And then Michael's already started. Darlow in goal is a strange one. Is Dubs on his way out? Everybody's talking about it now in the chat. Ask Ben, is there any truth in the offer still being on the table for Maddison?
Not as I understand it, only because I think Newcastle have learnt very quickly that Leicester not only won't sell Fofana and Maddison, but they'd like to offer Maddison a new contract. So I suppose late in the window, you might come back with an offer if you're Newcastle. I'm not saying they will, but it's a tactic, isn't it? If Fofana's still there and Newcastle feel there's opportunism and they haven't got another target, then you might just come back and say, take it or leave it. And Newcastle have been very good, again, at being tactical with their offers and sticking to their guns. And they have to, because everybody wrongly thinks they're the club that can just be cashed in on. And they are actually treating this window and the January window, perhaps with the exception of Chris Wood, but they needed to urgently move in the market due to the threat of relegation. They're treating finances very Newcastle-like, not PIF-like. And there's still almost a Ashley transition in that respect, which is making them very tough to deal with. And they're getting their targets. So you have to give Dan Ashworth, who's new, Eddie Howe, who's reasonably new, and the owners, of course, who are reasonably new, a whole lot of credit, because they've made sure that they're not seen as the big spending, cash throwing club that they have this caricatured reputation of being. It's been a business orientated window. With Maddison, I still don't think a deal will happen. And I think the fact that Newcastle went Harrison, no, then Maddison, and then back to Harrison again with the second bid, perhaps tells you that they've moved on from James Maddison. And at the time of recording, that is my understanding, that there's no active pursuit for James Maddison. If they come back in late in the window, it will be a U-turn on that stance because they try their luck at the very death. But I think that Newcastle accept at the moment that for the amount they're prepared to pay, and due to Leicester's stance on Maddison, it's not a player that they stand a high percentage chance of getting.
Okay, John has just put a nice offer in the chat. 2 Platinum Club tickets versus Brentford up for grabs in Friday's members draw. So get a pack to qualify for that. I'm just going to pitch that up at the top there. There you go. So if anybody wants a membership, hasn't got one, you could be in a chance of winning 2 tickets. Well worth getting involved in that. Barry says, do you think we could go in for Diaby, Ben?
Well, Diaby is a strange one because there's still this feeling that he's not going to leave. And for all of the late window chat, let's not forget that Diaby is there and on record as saying that he's going to stay at Leverkusen. And there's been vague Newcastle interest. There's been vague Arsenal interest in the sense that there is on a short list. But I come back to what I said before, that if Eddie Howe is to be believed, Newcastle's budget is relatively modest because they spent big in January. There's an excellent Swiss Remble thread that explains why Newcastle are comfortably able to spend, though. So that should make Howe's comments slightly disputed. And it's normal for a manager, I suppose, to sell a club like Newcastle as being prudent because that's their strategy. But if you take his comments at face value and you look at the fee for Diaby, it's going to be very difficult for Newcastle United to afford Isaac and Diaby and potentially João Pedro between now and the end of the window based on their financial targets. And I think that this also boils down to strategy, because even if the money is there to spend, Newcastle have got momentum and chemistry. They showed that in abundance against Manchester City. What a game that was, by the way. So because the aim of Newcastle is over, let's say, 3 years to establish themselves somewhere on the cusp of Europe and then build from there, you don't want to spend all your money now, even if you've got it. You want to give this group a chance because this group is good enough to qualify for Europe. And they're definitely good enough to be in the top half of the table. So if you keep adding and you disrupt the chemistry and you add perhaps either too much depth or too many personalities fighting for the same positions, you lose that momentum. And that's sort of the irony with Newcastle United, that who is causing the success at the moment? It's not Botman, which is why he didn't start the first game of the season. It's the form of Shah. Lascelles is the captain. It's the Trippier signing. Dan Burn in great form. It's Bruno. It's Joe Linton. It's Callum Wilson when fit. It's Miguel Almiron, who's found a second wave. It's ASM when he has his day and can be streaky in his form. So then, of course, you want to add 3 or 4 more. But when you're making the selection, a lot of what Newcastle have got are doing the job at the moment. So if you can ride that through a season and add a bit more economically, both in terms of numbers and finances, then who knows? You might get in the Europa League. You might get in the Europa Conference League. You'll almost certainly, based on what we've seen so far, get in the top half of the Premier League. Leave it at that. Save your money. And then in a year's time, when you've moved from they're definitely going down to they finished last season in European form to they've qualified for Europe in a best case scenario, that's when you can then say, right, we're going to take the money we didn't spend on Diaby because we didn't really need him, and we're going to buy depth because we're in the Europa League, or we're going to spend big because now we think that the next stepping stone could be pushing for top 6 or top 4. So it's not all about just spending now for the sake of it, even if financial fair play did allow. It's about keeping that momentum under Howe. And the irony is despite the fact fans would like to see new signings and strengthening, for me, the best Newcastle United players were at the squad already, even when they were struggling, or were added in January. So why tinker dramatically with that?
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, trying to get through these questions before we finish. 10 minutes left in the show. James asks an interesting one. He says, do either of you think that the performance against Manchester City and now the Toon flexing their financial muscles, the big boys are starting to look over their shoulders with a worried look? I think they were doing that anyway, weren't they, Ben? I mean, Newcastle, I think Chelsea have reached out. We know the relationship between our owners and their owners is evident for all to see. And I think there's an acceptance. Newcastle are at the top table. And although not challenging for honours at the moment, if they manage the club the way that they should do over the next few years, we'll surely be there or thereabouts over the next few years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that what we're seeing from certainly Chelsea's new owners is a attempt to change the dynamic and work more collaboratively together. So it's not so much that Newcastle are a threat as they're an opportunity, at least in Chelsea's eyes. And this is why I've always said the Big Six is not a nice tag, because it's not reflective always of the football and where the teams finish. And it keeps the Premier League ingrained as a league without equality. And there's 20 clubs in the Premier League. And regardless of whether you come up as a first timer or whether you've won multiple Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues, you're in the same league and anyone can beat anyone. And Fulham have shown that already. And Newcastle have shown that against Manchester City. And everybody has an equal vote. And of course, the older, more ingrained clubs want to protect and really have done since there were 3 big clubs or 4 big clubs in the Premier League. But they're the ones that have got to modernise. So Manchester United can't just dine off their past. Manchester City and the same city have come in with a business model, with a recruitment model, with a growth of the brand. And even though Manchester United is perhaps a more globally known brand still, Manchester United is the less sustainable football club. And Chelsea, now it's not under Abramovich, are trying to do exactly the same thing and say we've got to modernise. And Newcastle are trying to do the same thing and say we've got to modernise. And this is the big difference, I think, that owners now, for me, are not in it out of a vanity on the business side. So when Abramovich first came in, it was about buying into a business and a football club and spending for success. And the vanity was in the success, not the celebrity or the hands-on challenge of managing a football club, which is why he never did any press. We never saw what he did. He never really spoke to anyone. And the Glazers fall into that model as well, for sure. But if you look at the Newcastle owners, if you look at the Chelsea owners, and there's 1 or 2 others, I think, that are in this category, they want the challenge of managing the football club and getting their hands dirty. So the appeal to them in spending is not just for success. Of course, that's the end goal still, but it's about being part of something. And you can tell that all of the Newcastle owners love it. Being in the crowd, waving the flags, seeing war flags, taking the team photos at the end of the matches, and so on. They want to be part of something. And it's actually really exciting to them because we don't get that experience that often as people in business, as people in media, but they're part of that dressing room. They're part of the day-to-day. They're part of the business. And that's wherein lies the vanity, which is a good thing because they're invested in a day-to-day sense. And when you're invested in a day-to-day sense, you start talking to other people and realizing that it's better to keep your enemies close. And I think that is the difference in mentality. So Newcastle, Chelsea form a division. And then suddenly you've got the more distant owners like a Daniel Levy, even John Henry at Liverpool, the Glazers, and so on. And instead of it being a big 6, you get to a point, I think, where you have friendships and professional relationships, and the way the Premier League conducts itself will change. And we saw that with Todd Bowley. After the Premier League stakeholders meeting, he had a meal and everyone laughed and said, he's got no idea. He's naive. He's holding a meal. How's that going to help? And some turned up and some didn't. And what happened at the meal? He spoke to Paul Barber at Brighton. They developed a relationship. He got Mark Cucurella. It led directly to a deal. And the same with Carney as well from Aston Villa. So he actually walked out of that meal with 2 signings. And I think Bowley's all about, we're the Premier League. So of course, Chelsea want to be the top dog in the Premier League. And of course, PIF want to dominate. But you don't do that as a football club. You don't get all the names you want unless you work collaboratively as well. And the reason for that is because some players want to join Newcastle for Newcastle, but a lot of players just want to join because of the wages or because it's the Premier League, it's the best league in the world, because of the stadiums they get to go to, because of the teams that they get to play against. And as long as the Premier League works collaboratively to grow its brand and its league, then everybody will benefit. Rights will be sold for more money. More players will want to come in. The standard will be increased. We'll get a better product, better players, and every single club will benefit. Now, the byproduct of that is you may get more rivals. So on the field, there's more competition. But if every game is like Newcastle, Manchester City, or Fulham, Liverpool, then let's do it, because that is the type of football we want. I don't think Newcastle would want to succeed like Abramovich did when he first joined Chelsea, of just buying, being instantly better than everybody else overnight, and then winning. It's fun for a season or 2. But then you get to a scenario like, and I mean no disrespect to them, Bayern Munich in Germany, PSG in France, and you start saying we're so good that everyone else kind of looks bad. And then the domestic games are really underwhelming. The beauty of the Premier League is if everything goes according to plan, sure, Newcastle might be first or they might be 15th. And there is a big difference in that. But if every game is enthralling, entertaining, passionate. And if Newcastle do what they did against Manchester City and show those qualities in every single game, then whether they finish 1st, 10th or 15th, as long as they don't go down, my opinion, other fans may disagree, is that the Newcastle fan base will be absolutely delighted, because all they crave for, first and foremost, is a team full of quality, full of excitement, full of passion, that actually kind of gives a damn. And that was the thing that was missing under Mike Ashley. And if that giving a damn leads to 8th this season, I don't think there's many of the fan base that will say, oh my God, what a disappointment. How on earth are we not in Europe with our ambition and our money? They'll be saying, we're Newcastle United. We're a club that represents the city. We're a community. We're together. We're passionate, and we're going places. And that hope, really, and that quality and that effort is arguably more important in the short term anyway than where Newcastle United finish in the league.
Brilliant stuff, man. People saying, does Ben stop for breath? No, this is Ben in full effect. This is why we love him on the show. Michael Gilchrist and Jacob Hall ask similar questions. Question for Ben: who does he think will leave? With a few players to shift to make the squad 25, other than not registering John Joe. And Jacob says, why have there been no bids for any of our players? Is our bench really that bad that nobody wants them?
Well, it's harsh on the bench, isn't it? But you're absolutely right that Newcastle are going to have to look at some outgoings, aren't they? The likes, I suppose, of Jamal Lewis, Matt Ritchie, Federico Fernandez. They're the ones that have kind of been allocated over the last few weeks. And I think it's a mixture of, they're on decent money at Newcastle comparative to the level of interest. One or two might have to drop down as well. And are they prepared to do that? But Newcastle are going to have to, I think, move relatively quickly between now and when the window closes in order to resolve this situation. And I don't know a massive amount, to be honest, about the level of interest and how advanced it might be as far as Newcastle are concerned. It's one of the things where when you work on transfers at this stage of the window, you're scrambling around the big names and the incomings, and sometimes the outgoings can be forgotten about. But if Newcastle are to be busy on the final day of the window, I honestly believe that it will be around the outgoings, because they just do, as you correctly say, need to reduce the squad a little bit. And I think there's one or two within the names that I've mentioned that are particularly interesting. Jamal Lewis, to me, seems like a little bit of a forgotten player. And I know that there was initial interest from Nottingham Forest in him, and Bournemouth were also looking as well. But this was earlier in the window and nothing advanced. And then the latest club is outside of the Premier League in Nice. So there's a circling interest around him. And I think he'll be a good signing, if I'm perfectly honest. One of those players that I'm not saying Newcastle will regret letting go, but could easily find a new second wind at the club that he joins. And he's only 24 years of age as well. So of all the names mentioned, I don't think it would be a disaster if Newcastle ended up keeping on to Jamal Lewis, but there is growing interest in him for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. Last question. Let's go with... we'll go for two more. This one, Ben, is there any truth in Mike Ashley negotiating for Wes Morgan? Asking price was $1 million. Mike Ashley continually offered 900,000, 905, 915 until Leicester refused to communicate. Have you heard that one on the grapevine at Leicester?
I've heard it on the grapevine, yes. And I did an interview with Wes Morgan round about a year ago to talk about Leicester's Premier League win. And I did actually ask him whether there was ever a possibility. And interestingly, he said that the closest club that ever circled and he considered joining was Manchester United, which I thought was very interesting considering his age. But they were obviously looking for some kind of defensive stopgap. I've heard the Newcastle story. The reason that I'm doubtful of it is I honestly can't think of a time at Leicester City when Wes Morgan would have been worth 1 million, even when the club had fallen. Now, before he joined Leicester, maybe that story was a possibility. But since he was at Leicester, I just think his valuation was always going to be more than 1 million. Wouldn't surprise me if Mike Ashley tried to get under 1 million in those terms, but it's not ever something I've had directly confirmed. And as I say, when I asked Morgan about a realistic possibility of a club that he could have moved to, the circling interest was actually, and surprisingly, from Manchester United.
Okay, who wants to hear us sing? Ben, do you want to hear us sing? Because one of our people in the chat has sent us a little song to welcome our potentially new striker.
I would love to hear a song.
Here we go. Gimme a striker from Sweden. He's our new centre forward and he plays in attack. Gimme a striker from Sweden. First name's Alexander and his surname's Isaac.
Oh, wow. That is absolutely brilliant. Let's do it again. I want in on this. You shouldn't sing another fan song, but let's put it back up if you can.
Oh no, I think that's it. It's gone. I've put it into the I've put it into the ethos now of wherever it came from. But I think
it's gone. I was gonna do a duet with you.
Oh, weird! Wow! Oh God! There's that many things in the chat now. I probably won't be able to find it. Well, let's get a prediction from you tonight. I'll try and find it, mate. And if we can make that happen, we will. But yeah, give us your views on tonight's game. Newcastle against Tranmere. You've heard the team. It's it's obviously a game which Newcastle fans want to see the team try and win. This is our chance to potentially win a cup.
Yeah, and I think in a World Cup year when a lot of the Premier League teams might not take this too seriously, this should be a priority for Newcastle United. And the challenge is always the opening game, in my opinion, because you can come into the lower league rounds away from home against Tranmere. And that's where, as we saw with Fulham, you can trip up. And almost Leicester, by the way, we needed penalties to beat Stockport last night. But if you get through this round, and then you draw like a Championship or a Premier League team, you have to take it seriously. And then from there, you're in the business end. It doesn't take too many games to get excitement into the business end of the League Cup. So I really hope that Newcastle take this one seriously. The selection is interesting because it is obviously a whole raft of changes. It's good to see Elliot Anderson get some game time. Hopefully Joe Willock can get some confidence and form as well. And there's clearly enough there to win the game. Chris Wood, exactly the kind of game where I think he'll be able to excel. And that could be quite useful as far as the Premier League is concerned. So I'd like to see him get a game as well. And what I like, as you would expect, is that if you look at the bench, there's enough quality there that if they fall behind in the game or they're struggling, there's Almiron, who is well suited to this type of game too. There's Bruno on the bench, I believe, as well. And there's Trippier, who can come on and kind of control the set piece situation. And with that kind of delivery, I expect Newcastle to cause Tranmere all kinds of problems. So I think they'll win at Prenton Park. It's a good pitch. It's not a particularly difficult place to go and play as far as like the surface is concerned. It's a very good stadium. It's a nice venue, actually. It's not that claustrophobic. So Newcastle will be able to like move the ball around. It's not the most modern of stadiums, obviously, but it's got a decent kind of outlook for a Premier League club to come and play without feeling like the pitch or the conditions are going to be too detrimental. And I think it'll just be a really good game. I think it'll be high scoring. I think Newcastle win this one by 3-1. And I think that Chris Wood scores a brace.
Okay, Tom says, I can't be having an ABBA-based chant subject to ABBA's greatest hits on the coach home from the 98 Cup final. I didn't like them before, but absolutely detested them ever since. Yes, and Isaac Mozza says it's Isaac. There we go. Alex has repeated the song. It was from Scott originally. So after 3, Ben, 1, 2,
wait. Before we start, because it doesn't really work with Isaac. So are we allowed to mispronounce it in order to get the song? Because it is Isaac.
Let's go Isaac.
Well, we got to go Isaac because it just flows better with the song.
Okay, God, I realised you were such a professional singer. Okay, here we go. After 3, 1, 2, 3. Gimme a striker from Sweden. He's our new centre forward and he plays in attack. Gimme a striker from Sweden. His first name's Alexander and his surname's Isaac.
So you sing it slower than me, because to me it goes like this. It goes, gimme a striker from Sweden. He's our centre forward and he plays in attack. Gimme a striker from Sweden. First name's Alexander and his surname's Isaac. Like, that is the pace, Steve. You were too slow.
Well, that's very good. I'm not an ABBA man, like, to be perfectly honest. But listen, Ben, you've done it. Thank you for doing that. At least we know when we come to do one of our big charity nights and we'll make a big donation to a charity. Maybe it's Children in Need. We'll do it again this year. I think we will get you on to do a song of your choice rather than that one. But thanks to Scott for sending that in. David is laughing. Go on, Ben, lad, says Steve. Rachel says, go on, Ben. You've clearly won the X Factor tonight, which is good. Paul Shanks says, don't give up the day job, Ben.
Hey, you've been telling me all summer, all takeover to give up the day job. And now when I give up the day job, you want me to go back to it.
Spot on, Ben, says Geordie Toon for life. Gary Milligan says the computer says no. We're going to be here all day with this one. But yeah, maybe me and Ben could team up for Britain's Got Talent or something. Yeah, it's worth having a chat offline about. Ben, we've got you on the show eventually. Thanks a lot for coming on, mate. And always appreciate you coming up and giving up your time for free. And I know the people in the chat do. Great figures tonight, 900 plus watching earlier on tonight. So thank you for coming on. Look forward to seeing you next week when the transfer window will be closing. So big show next week, Ben. Look forward to seeing you then, mate.
Yeah, enjoy the game, everyone. Have a good week.
Take care, mate. Bye-bye.